it's past 11:59.
Okay.
The meeting gets started. Thank you all for coming. This is the thesis defense for Louis, and he's going to present his research insights for the first 20 minutes or so. And then after that, community members will have a chance to ask him questions, and then we'll open up for questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Today I'm gonna be defending my thesis. I'm really nervous, but hopefully it's gonna be okay. So it's about L1 Basonesia and L2 English writing process within a really specific context of Indonesian students in the US universities. And Basonesia, what is Basonesia? Basonesia is basically like a national language or lingua franca of Indonesian people, because Indonesia is really diverse in terms of linguistic. Like people can speak different local language compared to one another, and then that's why some people need one unified language, which is Basonesia here. And for information, English is considered as a foreign language in Indonesia. EFL context, really strong EFL context. That's why like the use of English is really limited in terms of like in the classroom. Communicated, being learned, and being taught is limited to classroom and not so much outside of classrooms. And one of the rationale why I'm doing this study with Indonesian demographic is of course because I'm Indonesian, so I'm interested in doing research with Indonesian demographic. And other than that, for the past decade at least, there has been a noticeable increase in terms of Indonesian students studying abroad, continuing in master's or doctoral degree, because the government has been trying so hard to improve human resource and investing a lot in education by giving so many opportunities, so many scholarships to Indonesian students. And then, when we talk about specifically L1 and L2 topic, it is considered as one of the major topics in second language writing field. It has been going around for a while, it's been discussed for a while, a couple of decades, and I've noticed that so many studies has been looking at this topic through the lens of mixed method with more emphasis on quantitative approach with the help through think-aloud protocols. And then I'm doing things a little bit differently, and I will explain later on. And lastly, not many second language writing research have been done with Indonesian context, Indonesian demographic, but there are some. However, one thing for sure, I'm really afraid to say this out loud, but little to non-existent studies have been found about Indonesia, like L1 Indonesia, Indonesia in L2 writing process. That's why I'm doing this. There has been some studies like looking at Korean students and then like Chinese students, Japanese students, but not really about Indonesian students. That's why I'm doing this. And with all that, these are some selected literature review existing studies, because it has been going on for a while, so I of course cannot cover all of them. This is some of the selected ones, and I think if I can say something about it, it has been centered around Wang and Wen 2002, because I think studies after Wang and Wen has been kind of like a continuation or either confirmation of what Wang and Wen has done before. And to be totally honest, my studies also kind of inspired by Wang and Wen in 2002. And for this selected literature review, I put into several categories here, or categorization. Like first focus is like L1 and L2 research method. As I said, many studies has been like heavily focusing on mixed method in quantitative. Why is that the case? Because basically L1 and L2 topic is about looking at how much L2 writers like incorporate their L1 throughout the whole process of L2 writing process. So like looking one by one, counting word by word, how many of them, how many they actually use their L1. So with that being said, the use of think-aloud protocol has been becoming really handy, really useful for that, because as the name suggests, think-aloud protocols allow researchers to actually find out what is inside the participant's head. Like they are required to actually think out loud, make it audible, make it can be accessed by researchers. So that's why think-aloud protocol has been really go well with mixed method with quantitative approach. But however, with that said, quantitative method is also still have some space, and quantitative method is actually like offering some unique perspective in terms of like looking at this issue, looking at this topic through different perspective, because there are so many things can be discovered like beyond numbers, beyond statistics, all that. And that's really interesting, and that's kind of like what I'm actually leaning into. And second focus, like L1 and L2 research finding, as far as I'm concerned, what I've noticed, most of studies using multiple text genre, most commonly narrative text and narrative text, because narrative text has been really useful in terms of like, it's good for observation, it's challenging, it's like take more effort, so it's really good, it's been used for quite a while. And I'm also doing that, I'm doing narrative text and narrative text. Secondly, privacy level. I see that there has been a connection between privacy level with the use of L1. Like past studies has been reviewed that if one participant having like higher fluency level, they will likely have like less L1. And the other way around, when they have like less fluency level, they will have more L1, something like that. And that's also one of the things that I'm trying to see. And lastly, language switching. I think it has been consensus or almost consensus, but I'm pretty sure it has been consensus that every L2 writers, when they write, they will move back and forth between the L1 and L2 because that's how their brain works, that's how language works, like L1 and L2. And take all that into Indonesian context because there has not been L1 and L2. I found these several themes in Indonesian context of psychological writing research as student attitudes, like looking at how Indonesian students really perceive writing in English. And I'm really sad to say, but it's really not that good positive connotation, like really negative. Students see it really negatively, like it's really stressful, it's really hard. It's like the hardest skills among 4 language skills, like listening, speaking, reading, writing. Writing is the hardest one. So whenever it comes to writing in English, it's always stressful. And with that said, the problem with Indonesian students primarily about mechanics, like the grammar stuff and sentence structure stuff. However, some studies also argue that well, the grammar can be one of the problem, but it's just one of them, not really the main problem. Some might have something to do with cognitive, like how they structure their pattern of the sentence or the paragraph, and how some kind of like mood is to be taken into account. When students writing and they have some good mood, they will having some better experience with writing. And then lastly, it's about student writing process. For this particular study, at least, they found like how Indonesian students write and how their strategies really can be seen. It's like planning, drafting, and then posting. It's really interesting, posting, and then revising, editing, something like that. And get compare that with another previous existing writing process from previous studies. And because of all that consideration, I'm designing my study with not doing think-aloud protocols. After a long discussion with my chair, we come a lot of discussion that, well, even though there are so many studies before using the protocol, it's really useful, but maybe it's not really useful at all because like it's kind of like interfering the participant. Like are we gonna really sure that they're gonna like act naturally when it comes to like someone told you to think out loud and you do think out loud, and then the researcher looking for the natural outcome, but it might not really coming out natural. So I'm not doing think-aloud protocols for that reason, for that case. And the nature of this research is actually qualitative, descriptive, and explorative. And this research is guided by 2 research questions. First of all, how do L1 Indonesian writers use the L1 in L2 English composing? And second of all, how does the use of L1 affect the student's writing process? And for the data analysis, I use thematic analysis by Ron and Clark, and then sampling strategy from Herbert and Michael. As you can see at the left side there, I did 3 data collection methods. One is the questionnaire, second of all is a writing task, simultaneously with writing observation, and lastly with interview. So what happened is that all of this happening online because my participants are spread across the US in so many different universities, so everything is online. And then they did questionnaire first and then writing task. Actually 30 minutes writing task followed by another 30 minutes of interview for writing task 1, and then the second writing task and second interview. That's what happened. And these are my participant pool. There are like 10 of them, 5 male, 5 female. Yeah, everything is intentional. I make them equal, kind of. And then they coming from all different majors, non-English majors specifically, because I've been seeing past studies, they always, or at least most of them use not English major students. So that's why this some of the things that I do differently. And they also have different language proficiency, really differing language proficiency level, and they come from 10 different universities. I have Mawar from Manchester, Amel from Penn State, Ali from Texas A&M, Anton from UPenn, Luna from Columbia, Gilang from BU, Indra from St. John's, Doro from George Washington, Lisa from Brown, and Anga from ASU. And after doing the data collection, analysis, and all that, oh yeah, of course all the names are pseudonym. I found the findings here. The right side is the first research questions, and second research question is the left side. So for the L1 use, I found it really as complex as assessing linguistic repertoire. As I've mentioned before, it has been like, for L2 writing, it's always been come back and forth with the L1 and L2. So that's also what happened with my participants as well. And then another thing is we call memory, really connected with L1 and L2, and I'll explain that a little bit more later. And then I found that there are more L1 used in narrative text compared to narrative text. And then I found a pattern that my participants actually start the first sentence or first paragraph with L1. and then they really have diverse writing strategies pattern. And for the effects of L1 use is actually for sense making, how they making sense what they write about, and how they look for ideas, and how they perceive L1 use as a time efficiency or L1 use avoidance. Like some of them actually like really showing strong idea of L1 use avoidance, because they might consider, well, if I use L1 most of the time, I'm gonna have like more time spending for running the whole task. So like some of them kind of like consider that. And then at the end, as I said, I'm not doing Tingala protocols, but some participants, I'm really lucky, some participants are really unique. They did it anyway. I never mentioned anything about Tingala protocols. And they don't know anything about Tingala protocols, but they did it. And what I found is that the think aloud protocols actually, the think aloud is used for looking for ideas, meta comment and in the reading, and meta comment and read aloud. So they generate the idea while commenting on themselves, and they read aloud what they write about while commenting on themselves. And because all of these findings are a lot, I cannot cover all of them. I will cover some of them. First is recall memory in L1 Pashnisha. So it's really interesting that I see how they recall the memory, like it's really connected with how the memory is created. If the memory created in L1, they need to go back to the L1 to access the memory, and vice versa. So what happened with Indra here, because I use pictures for my narrative task, so when Indra looks at the pictures, well, the picture is not Indonesian people, so he's not thinking in Indonesia, so he's okay. And then he go back to recall memory while he's staying in the US and do the writing using L2. And then for Adit here, every experience happened in Indonesia. So that's why for Adit, it is easier for me to think first in Pashnisha. That's what happened. So like really strong connection between memory and how the memory is created. Here is the diverse writing strategies. First of all, drafting and exchange feedback is empty because my data collection is one-time, real-time situation kind of thing. So they don't really require to have drafting, and they don't have a chance to actually exchange feedback with their peers because it's one-one, me as a researcher and the participant. So that's why they're empty. And the others, there are so many no's and yeses, and I want to like take a look more at the planning, because for planning, some say no, and I'm kind of like, wow, really? Do you really not plan while writing? And I'm keep like asking questions, and then like they say, well, I actually plan, but it's not really plan because it's not proper plan. So yeah, maybe no. That's what they say. And then another interesting thing is that some planning is feasible through the screen recording, but some just think inside your head. That's really interesting. And these are the sample for my unique participant, and they actually did think a lot without me even saying anything about think a lot. First is Gilang. Gilang did meta comment in generating, so Gilang generated ideas while commenting on himself. Like in minute 11, Gilang said out loud, represented, and feel more motivated. What's happening in the screen is that Gilang looking at the screen, feel with his planning, but not putting any first word yet. And then do think out, followed by writing down the first word on the introduction part. Also can be seen right there, like the planning is actually feasible, like some point of 1, 2, 3, point 1, point 2, point 3, and then like followed by a simple sentence that will be later on developed into complete sentence, complete paragraph. And kind of like using P stands for paragraph, something like that. The same thing also happened with Luna. Luna doing meta comment and read aloud. It can be seen in minute 26. Luna said both psychologically and culturally. Luna said that out loud, while also Luna reads aloud while writing. So that's the proof of Luna reading aloud, and the think aloud happened during the read aloud. And here is the L1 is avoidance, and I connect L1 is avoidance with language proficiency, because as you can see here from my 5 samples among 10 participants, they have really different language proficiency, IELTS 7, IELTS 6.5. However, if we can take a look at the narrative task and narrative task, we can see there like the L1 and L2 is not really significantly different. And I think it's really interesting for Lisa. Lisa is a really interesting case because Lisa is showing a strong idea, that a conflicting idea whether or not to actually use L1. We can see Lisa is really consistent, 20% L1 in narrative and 20% L1 in narrative task. So like really consistent, right? So when I ask more about that, she said like she's actually okay with, if you're not really good writing in English, you can like write in L1 Indonesia first and then translate it into English. But then again, Lisa also acknowledged the notion of, well, if you keep doing that, you will never develop as a writer, as English writers. So that's why this is really interesting, and how the L1 use avoidance kind of connected with the language proficiency. So it doesn't really mean if you have lower proficiency level, you will have more L1, something like that. Next is the implication. So what I've gathered, I noticed that there are more L1 narrative tests compared to narrative tasks. Even though like what I do is actually this qualitative method compared to so many other mixed method, quantitative method in the past, but the result is actually aligning to one another. Like here, okay, for the presentation, it's actually I just do self-assessment. I ask the participant, how many do you think like representation of L1 you use in this writing task? And they just say it out loud. And then for the average, I just count all of them and make the average. So the average is 28.5% for argumentative and then 16.5 for the narrative. Yeah, aligning with some studies like Sven Lee and Kim In Yoon. Other than that, I also find no significant difference for proficiency level as determining factor for L1 use. And yeah, in the past, these findings actually contradictory with one another study, Kobayashi and Renan, and then two, kind of like showing and proving that high proficiency level for participants gonna have like less L1 because they are not really benefited from using L1 anyway. And that means like if the participant having lower proficiency level, they have more L1. Comparing to Wade and Edel in 2009, there is no significant difference really can be found. So based on my study, I think L1 and L2, if I can conclude in some sentences, some conclusion, even though it's not really conclusion discussion, it's natural, complex, unique, individualized phenomenon. And of course, this is unique for Indonesian demographic. I'm not saying this for other demographic. Another implication is that my study is really limited into 10 participants from 10 different universities. So if any researchers interested in doing further research, they might consider to do more than 10 and then more writing task types because I only use two, right, narrative and then argumentative. Maybe there are more options like letters or emails, something like that. And then my other limitation is that I only use two 30-minute writing tasks followed by 2 30-minute interviews. So the time frame is really there, really strong there. So future research might consider to do more, lengthening the time frame or the duration, like an hour or a day or a week, I don't know, something like that. And then my limitation is pictures as narrative tasks. I believe it's different, but when I think about it, it's not really different. I use 3 different images. The first image is a group of international students. Second image is a group of international students, but sitting in class or library. And the third one is how they graduate from university. And now that I think about it, it's really connected. And then, even though some participants actually follow that connection, some not. But I think for future research, it's good and wise to consider non-human pictures like animated or like something like that, more abstract. And then for the narrative task form, basically. And this is the bibliography, and that's basically all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed reading this work, and as I told you before, it's like dissertation level research that I was really impressed with the work that you put into it, and I learned a lot from reading about your research. So I have a few questions. Let's see. Let's start with the implications one. What do you think are the implications for of your findings for teachers and for the writers themselves? What did you learn about writing that could be beneficial in for those?
Okay, I think some of the implications would be like, it is like we tend to have this mindset that if you want to be good in English, you need to only just use your English, right? But for us who have more than one language, we need to like keep switch back and forth, right? And then like, well, if we are trying to choose one, but we have another one, like why waste it like that? Because like, I think that some, I would say teachers really like want the students to be better, that they need students to think in English, write in English, forget the L1, something like that. But I don't think it's really wise to do so. And those kind of mindset also going to the students, like if I want to be a really good English speaker, English writers, I need to start only using English, forget about my L1 for a while. And I don't think it's really good. And I think I I hope some of the application will be they realize about that and they just embrace their L1, not and then just use all of them, all of their linguistic repertoire, not just bending one of them or something like that. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Thank you so much. Another thing I was really curious about, and I wondered if you had anything in the interviews that came out about this issue. What role did their feelings of anxiety play in their use of L1 and L2 composing? There was like this emotional aspect to it. So when they were feeling more anxious about a task, did they rely more on L1, or what role did that emotion play in their L1 use and L2 composing?
Yeah, I mean like, well, coming from either spoken forms or written forms, both are really pressure, like for L2 learners, right? And the pressure for speaking is one thing, but the pressure for writing is another thing. And then like I think the mental pressure, whatever that is actually kind of make them going back to their L1 and use the L1 more. Like they're gonna be using what they actually feel enjoying more, something like that, than actually do it. Because, well, in speaking you can speak and then if some errors happen, it's okay. But in writing, it's gonna be like really obvious right there. So then it's like, student will be like really think more. What should I put? What should I use? Should I use like better word, fancy word, or just regular word, something like that? So yeah, it's really play a part.
Okay, yeah, that's what it seemed like. I'm wondering if there's any studies on that. That would be interesting to do a study on just the emotional aspect of that choice or the role that it plays in that. In what ways do your experiences as a writer in using L1 and composing L2 tasks align with your participants? In what way did your L1 affect your writing of this thesis, which was an argumentation of task of sorts? You, yes.
Yeah, I mean like it's interesting because I'm looking at writing process and during the same time also writing my thesis, I'm having this real-time situation like, oh, I'm looking at their writing but also I'm looking at my situation. So yeah, I would say as an L2 writers, I always feel like I'm in between, even though I can say I'm pretty confident with my English, but when it comes to actually doing it, I have some percent of my anxiety behind me. Like, oh, I'm not gonna be as perfect as, you know, how if your L1 is English and I'm not gonna be perfect as them. But yeah, I think it's always mixed feelings, I would say.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one more question at this time. Maybe something else will come up as I hear the other questions. But what did you learn about doing research from doing this research, and what would you do differently or the same if you were to start the study all over again?
Oh.
I know you had some future research recommendations, but
Yeah.
what did you learn about the process of research through this?
It takes time, it takes patience, like approach the participants. Some say just no directly. Some might take some time to say, oh, I think no. Okay, why don't say no at the beginning? And then some say like, oh, I'm good with this day, but oh no, actually I'm busy. Let's postpone it. Okay, I'm okay. And then like postpone it again and again and again. I need to like keep my professionalism intact. Like, yeah, I'm good. It's okay. I can reschedule that, even though like I need to like I also busy, but okay, it's okay. Yeah. And another thing, I think there are so many variables in doing this. Like, as you see my limitation, there are so many limitations. If I have more time, I will do things a little more different, with more writing task time, with more duration, yeah, something like that. I think mine is a kind of a hurry. Like I remember I say to my participant like, you can write as long as possible, but approximately 30 minutes. Kind of like I give them freedom, but also give them limitation as well. Like I'm expecting you to write as long as possible. It's okay, but I'm only saying like, well, approximately 30 minutes, but it's actually really okay for you to take more than 30 minutes. Some of them really do take more than 30 minutes. Some of them feel bad and kind of like just take to the point that, oh, it's time, I'm finished. So like I feel bad kind of with my time frame.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions for this point in time.
Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just reiterate, I thought this was a really rigorous, very thorough study. I appreciate working with So, yeah, I have, just a sense of curiosity more. I was curious about how you might see a study like this, and I don't know if studies like this have been done, using multiple L1 participants, i.e. not, I know you have the commonality of the Indonesian official Indonesian language with the multiple dialects and languages within there. What it might look like across, Vietnamese, French, German, other L1s. Would this study work in that situation, or how would you see this perhaps being used?
Are you saying like if I'm doing the study and then I have to participate with different L1?
Yeah.
It's gonna be really complicated.
Yeah.
And
That's what I was thinking.
yeah. But I think it's also possible if the researcher is not only one, like multiple researchers with multiple L1. I think that's possible. Yeah. But it's interesting, yeah.
So larger sort of aggregate kind of thing. Okay, just curious about that, and where studies like that have been done. And the other question I had was to do with the notion of proficiency, because what your study does is it calls into question some of the assumptions of proficiency, and this goes to our larger discussions we've had about literacy and theories of literacy, because of this quantitative measure that is problematic in many ways, because it does kind of evoke a functionalist kind of perspective. What sort of implications does your study have for the sort of like the structure, if you will, the larger sort of notion of language proficiency as a measurement tool that in some cases like this actually kind of tends to pigeonhole or maybe perhaps even stigmatize students who are doing L2, L1, right?
Yeah, I think it's really not fair looking at the students based on their numbers on papers. Oh, you have this number, something IELTS. Oh, you have this really high. So I think what's presented on the papers of language proficiency level test, kind of thing, English test, is not really gonna be translated right away into what's actually happening, right? And then I think researchers needs to really pay this into some sort of like more attention. Like whenever they do the work with the participants, they may require the language proficiency, but it's just one of the many other parts of the whole things. And that's why when I'm looking at this, I'm not necessarily looking at, oh, this one participant have higher than this one. I'm trying so hard to looking at them the same, not based on their language proficiency.
Was there any sense that participants intended to sort of work to their level of proficiency, or perhaps were surprised when it turned out that they were perhaps more proficient than their proficiency test suggested?
Not really sure about that. But based on previous studies, it's always like, oh, this participant have more L1 because he has less proficiency level, something like that.
Okay. And this one other thing which I found very interesting was the use of the images. And you talk about potentially the use of non-human images. I recall, getting, doing like IQ tests and things like that when I was in school, grade school, and most of the tests, of course, were imported from the U.S. And so even those neutral images, pictures of houses, stacks of firewood, which I had no idea what those things are, even have those, things like this. Even those supposed to be neutral, which is a picture of a cat, a picture of a dog, can have extremely different cultural things. So I'm just wondering, like, in terms of using images and even non-human images, how that might, we have to look at that more closely, more carefully in terms of what are some of the potential cultural understandings or misunderstandings of what those images are supposed to represent in some cases.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I also agree with you. Some pictures may mean something in other country, in another one in another country. And that's why one of the implications I strongly suggesting for any future studies to do really differently. I'm really feel bad kind of using human, as real humans, as the image. Maybe if I do things differently, they will come out with another writing task. So what happened, most of them is actually like tailor the pictures. Oh, and it's either fiction or not fiction based on their experience, or some of them actually write a fiction, a really fiction. And when the writing is done, I'm asking like, is this really happened? This really interesting story. No, I made it up. Really? the whole thing, yeah, kinda. Yeah, so it's really interesting that different people react to the prompts differently, and even more so if the picture is actually natural. I'm wondering that too.
Thank you.
You asked my question about the pictures. I was gonna bring up
Oh.
the pictures too. So yeah, 'cause I found that really interesting, but no, I don't have any additional ones.
Can we move on to the audience?
Sure.
Do you have any questions?
You may have mentioned this, and if you did, I missed it. But can you tell us a bit about the prompt that they had, and specifically if they were told that they could use the first language?
My prompts, one is the narrative task is using 3 pictures. Can I make it bigger? I don't know. And the second is I'm asking like whether or not they agree or not that some people actually feel better studying in library and Starbucks because they feel like people watch them, so they feel more motivated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first one was to make a story out of those
Yeah,
pictures.
I really give freedom, a lot of freedom with narrative tasks, and my participants actually react to this really differently because they're like, I have no clue what to write.
Right, yeah.
And then for that, I expect that there will be more L1 in narrative, but
Okay.
it turns out there are more L1 in argumentative.
And when you gave that prompt, did you say, write it in English, or you can write in any language you
Oh, I
like?
should be instruct them to write in English.
Okay.
Yeah.
But some still chose to use Indonesian.
Oh, when I say use their L1, it's like they think about their L1. They think in the L1.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like they use L1 and L2 in their thinking, not in like writing them down. Yeah.
Got it.
Any other questions? All right. We don't have any more questions, then we will ask the audience and we to leave the room.